This is going unnoticed by a lot of people. But here it won't go unnoticed. This could have a major twist in this whole situation. What is this, Andrea Gonçalves? Lindenberg Farias, the federal deputy, filed the petition with the federal Supreme Court. This petition was sent to Justice Alexandre de Moraes. Why was it sent to Justice Alexandre de Moraes? Because it was understood that he has jurisdiction to review this matter. Minister Alexandre de Moraes received this petition. I'm going to show you now. What are they asking for there? Justice Alexandre de Moraes received it, and he referred the matter to the Attorney General, Paulo Gonay. What is being requested there? The expansion of the investigation that led to the case against Eduardo Bolsonaro. Today, there is a case that is in the final argument stage. The case is coming to an end. Soon, the first panel of the Federal Supreme Court should schedule the judgment hearing, which I believe will be in person, where we will follow it live here, which will be the trial of Eduardo Bolsonaro for the crime of coercion during legal proceedings combined with Article 71, which is the crime committed in continuing offense. What does that mean, Andrea Gonçalves? It means he can be convicted of up to 7 crimes of coercion during legal proceedings. The sentences aren't added together, but the sentence can be increased by 2/3. It can even be increased by another 1/3. What does that mean? I believe that Eduardo Bolsonaro will be convicted of this crime and that he will get more than 8 years in prison. In other words, he will start serving the sentence in a closed prison regime. In fact, when the Prosecutor General filed charges against Eduardo Bolsonaro, he used the case of Daniel Silveira as an example in his complaint. Do you remember Daniel Silveira? He was a federal deputy shooting, fighting, and chaos, threatening everyone, trying to intimidate the Supreme Court justice. It was all madness. He was sentenced to almost 9 years in prison, and he's still in prison to this day. He was granted parole. He disobeyed the court-ordered restrictions. That was on December 24th of last year. He ended up going back to the closed prison regime, and Alexandre de Moraes said he won't be released anytime soon. When the Prosecutor General filed charges against Eduardo Bolsonaro, he used Daniel Silveira's case as an example. For me, he will be convicted, Eduardo, and sentenced to more than 8 years in prison, which means serving time in a closed prison regime. Soon he will officially be a fugitive in the United States, Eduardo Bolsonaro. But here's what happens. Why am I explaining this to you? Alexandre de Moraes, in light of the new facts that have been revealed, what new facts, Andrea? That the money Daniel Vorcaro transferred for the movie apparently was not actually for the movie. It is already known that it went to a fund, to an account in Texas, which is managed by Carlisto, Eduardo Bolsonaro's lawyer. In light of these new facts, Justice Alexandre de Moraes contacted the Attorney General's office to find out whether to expand the investigation and this process to investigate as well. Bolsonaro and Flavio Bolsonaro, because Eduardo is already there. Because what's the suspicion, Andrea Gonçalves? It's that this money, either all of it or most of it, was used to support Eduardo Bolsonaro so that he could be in the United States and consequently commit the crime of coercion in the course of the proceedings. In other words, if this is proven, Bolsonaro and Flavio Bolsonaro would be the ones financing Eduardo Bolsonaro to commit crimes against Brazil. For example, issues like coercion during the process, the cause of the tariff hike, the suspension of visas for authorities, and the application of the Magnitsky Act. Then you might say, Andrea, I can even understand Flavio because he was collecting money from Daniel Vorcaro and the money ended up in the Texas account. But why is Bolsonaro also involved in this story? because he's in jail. What did he do? Bolsonaro would be the main beneficiary. Because the initial idea behind this whole situation of coercion during the proceedings and this money that possibly funded all of this, what was the goal of all of it? Amnesty for Bolsonaro. To coerce the justices of the Supreme Federal Court so that they would back down and so that Bolsonaro wouldn't be convicted. Because all of this happened, I don't know if you remember, but I'll remind you here. In the context of Bolsonaro's case of coercion during the proceedings, obstruction of justice, and all the other crimes, the armed criminal organization, aggravated damage to public property, and damage to protected heritage property, which resulted in 27 years and 3 months in prison. So who would be the main beneficiary? Bolsonaro. That's why Bolsonaro is also involved in this new situation. I'll show you the document. There are several requests and everything will be in the hands of the prosecutor general. If the prosecutor general says so. Okay. Things are going to get rough because Andrea Gonçalves Alexandre de Moraes is going to step into the fight. And what Andre Mendonça should have already done but didn't, Alexandre de Moraes will do. For example, Andrea Gonçalves, the electronic ankle monitor on Flavio Bolsonaro, passport seizure, access to his bank records and phone records, which should have already been done by Andre Mendonça regarding Flavio Bolsonaro. And so far, it hasn't been done. In fact, meanwhile, Flavio Bolsonaro, in my opinion, went to the United States to be humiliated, to be embarrassed, to pretend that he went there to meet with Trump. There was no meeting. It was just a photo opportunity, but actually he went there to destroy evidence and to coordinate stories. And this is only possible because Andre Mendonça still hasn't put a leash on Flavio Bolsonaro just because he hasn't taken his passport yet. So there could be a twist in all of this with Alexandre de Moraes getting involved. I repeat, who will it depend on? On the position of the prosecutor general. If the prosecutor general gives Alexandre de Moraes the green light, you can expect things to get rough. Because if it depends on Andre Mendonça, man, Andre Mendonça didn't authorize a search and seizure inside Senator Ciro Nogueira's office, guys. I explained this to you all here. Ciro Nogueira, at the beginning of the month, you saw there was a search and seizure operation where the federal police found evidence that he was receiving a monthly payments of $300,000 to $500,000 to help Daniel Bocaro with the fraud. Then there were searches and seizures at his address. Vehicles were seized, cars, properties were frozen, everything happened. Then Alexandre de Moraes did not authorize a search and seizure in Ciro Nogueira's office. What did Andre Mendonça do? He sent the message, hide everything in your office because in your office I don't authorize search and seizure. Do you think Flavio hasn't already hidden everything in his office too? If it's up to Andre Mendonça, everything stays hidden in the office. You can't conduct search and seizure in the office. How ridiculous. What kind of stupid thing is this? This is helping criminals stay. But with Alexandre de Moraes, we know that's not the case. Alexandre de Moraes orders them to go into the National Congress, wherever it is, and take whatever they find, even arrest people, and that's how it should be. A criminal is a criminal. It's not because they're a congressman. It's not because they're a senator. It's not because they're wearing a suit and tie. A criminal is a criminal. A criminal is a criminal. And they must be treated that way. And I'm going to tell you something. We need this turnaround. It needs... In my view, the way Andre Mendonça is moving with the opening of this loophole of not having search and seizure inside the office, letting people go free, look, destroying evidence and tampering with witnesses, coordinating their stories, that's not possible, right? Let's take a look at the request here. What were the terms of Alexandre de Moraes' referral to the Prosecutor General's office? Let's take a look at the document here. We're going to read it bit by bit. Complainant's argument, I'll make it bigger so you can see it better in case you want to read it too. You might be able to. It should be expanded to cover the investigation of the possible connection between the financing of the film Dark Horse, Rose, and the amounts negotiated by Flavio Bolsonaro with Daniel Vorcaro. The intentional actions of Eduardo Bolsonaro, the campaign for sanctions against Brazilian authorities, visa restrictions, tariffs against national productive sectors, and attempted coercion in the course of the proceedings to obtain amnesty for Jair Bolsonaro and other convicted individuals in the coup plot cases. The following requests were made. The acceptance of this petition as a formal communication of supervening facts. What does that mean? The new facts, which I just explained to you. Connected to the subject of inquiry 4995, which investigates and prosecutes only Eduardo Bolsonaro. The idea is to include Bolsonaro and Flavio Bolsonaro. The following is requested: the submission of documents, news reports, minutes, transcripts, certificates, and other related elements. The prior notification of the Office of the Attorney General of the Republic for a specific response regarding the expansion of this investigation in subject matter and persons involved. The expansion of the investigation's subject matter to include the inquiry into the possible connection between the financing of Aki Jose's film and the amounts negotiated by Flavio Bolsonaro with Daniel Vorcaro. The international activities of Eduardo Bolsonaro. The sanctions campaign against Brazilian authorities, the restrictions on visas, the tariffs against domestic industries, and the attempt at coercion during the proceedings to obtain amnesty for Bolsonaro and other convicted individuals. The expansion of the investigation to include Flavio Bolsonaro due to evidence of his involvement in the raising, collection, intermediation, or allocation of funds linked to the Aki Jose project. The inclusion of Jair Bolsonaro as a beneficiary of the investigated facts without prejudice to the later determination of his procedural status based on the Attorney General's statement and further evidentiary development. The sharing with the inquiry of evidence produced in the investigation involving Daniel Vorcaro, Banco Mastra, possible financial operators, intermediaries, and companies linked to the film. Aki Jose, contracts, messages, audios, receipts, and financial intelligence reports. The request to the federal police for specific reports on the relationship between the data seized in the Banco Mastra investigations and the facts investigated in the inquiry. The issuance of an official letter to COAF, IFE, Central Bank, Federal Revenue Service, CC, CVM, the federal police, and other competent authorities to identify financial flows related to Daniel Vorcaro, Banco Mastra, Flavio Bolsonaro, intermediary companies, production companies, and legal entities linked to the film project. The preservation of digital evidence, native files, metadata, messages, audio recordings, electronic contracts, digital signature records, emails, cloud data, logs, hashtags, and original documents related to the facts. The imposition in relation to Flavio Bolsonaro of precautionary measures such as the surrender of his passport, prohibition from leaving the country without judicial authorization, notification of address, and prohibition of contact with Daniel Vorcaro, financial intermediaries, and other individuals to be identified by the federal police should the PGR so request or should Your Honor find the legal requirements present. Precautionary freezing of assets and funds belonging to Flavio Bolsonaro and individuals or legal entities directly linked to the operation. Initially limited to the amounts reported as promised, paid, collected, or intermediated within the scope of the film project without prejudice to later adjustments. The use of the CISVAJU, RENAJUDE, InfoJude, CNIB, CCSB, and Bacan systems for the identification and preservation of assets, money, funds, and investments. The evaluation of a request for international legal cooperation with the United States to obtain financial, contractual, corporate, tax, immigration, and internal lobbying records related to the film. The actions of Eduardo Bolsonaro and any possible payments to consultants and registered companies, offices, or intermediaries abroad. The specific investigation of the hypothesis that funds formerly allocated to the film may have been diverted in whole or in part to finance the international campaign of sanctions, visa restrictions, tariffs, and coercion against Brazilian authorities, investigation of possible money laundering, illegal campaign financing, propaganda, disguised electoral propaganda, slush funds, criminal organization, coercion during the legal process, and attacks on national sovereignty. As the evidence develops, partial confidentiality is imposed on sensitive documents and banking, tax, and telematics data, preserving the publication of procedural acts as long as it does not compromise ongoing investigations. Alternatively, if Your Honor deems it necessary, separate proceedings may be opened by extracting the relevant filings and assigning them by prior jurisdiction while maintaining the sharing of evidence. So, what did he decide? Send all of this to the Prosecutor General of the Republic to find out what the PGR's position is on all of this. If the Attorney General gives the green light and if the authority and freedom to act are confirmed, then Moraes will be responsible for that part. Include Bolsonaro, Flávio Bolsonaro, Eduardo, include Flávio in the film. Why will he be responsible, Andre? If Andre Mendonça is already investigating Daniel Vorcaro's situation, it's because he is the judge with prior jurisdiction, as I just told you and read. What does that mean, a judge with prior jurisdiction? He is the first judge who handled the case. Up until now, he is the judge of the case, the rapporteur who is handling the case against Eduardo Bolsonaro over attacks on Brazil's justice system, right? It's attacks on the Brazilian justice. But now a supervening fact has come up, a new fact that might justify why Eduardo Bolsonaro went to the United States to do all this, because he had a lot of money, extra money, because he had a sponsor. And who was the sponsor? Daniel Vorcaro. Do you understand, dear? The judge with prior jurisdiction is Alexandre de Moraes. At least in this part of the story, with Daniel Vorcaro giving money to Flávio Bolsonaro, to Eduardo Bolsonaro, to commit the crime he committed of coercion during the proceedings, it's Alexandre de Moraes. Everything depends on the Prosecutor General now. Then you ask, Andre, what do you think about all this based on your understanding? I believe that the investigation of this inquiry, which for now only includes Eduardo Bolsonaro, will also include Flávio Bolsonaro. Bolsonaro at first, no. No, Andre, no. Why? Because Bolsonaro, for now, there has been no direct connection proven so far between him and Vorcaro. It was proven who was asking for the money, and that was Flávio Bolsonaro. So I believe that this investigation needs to be expanded to include, for now, Flávio Bolsonaro. Other names will appear. Afterwards, if the Prosecutor General gives the green light, who will be included? It's inevitable. There's no chance it won't be. Mário Frias, federal deputy, former Minister of Culture under Bolsonaro, producer of the film Mário Frias. He should also be included afterwards, giving this red light, and the process should continue, including other crimes. Regarding this whole situation, Alexandre de Moraes will be the justice assigned to the case. Why? Because he is the assigned judge in this case. And this could cause a turnaround in the whole case. Did you understand, my dear? This is very serious, and maybe Alexandre de Moraes will do what Andre Mendonça isn't doing, and what he should be doing. Andrea, but the sheep, right? Andrea Goncalves, isn't Alexandre de Moraes disqualified? He isn't. Brazil's Supreme Court has stated that Alexandre de Moraes is not disqualified in this situation. The family company had a contract with Daniel Vorcaro, his wife's company. The contract was with Daniel Vorcaro, not Alexandre de Moraes, who isn't impeded. Now, Alexandre de Moraes, he can recuse himself if he believes there is any situation that could affect his judgment and impartiality. Then he can recuse himself. But I believe that if this were to happen, he would have already done it in the first document and sent this situation to another judge. And he didn't do that. He issued the order and summoned the Prosecutor General. Do you understand? I don't think that will happen since he's neither disqualified nor subject to recusal. All right. And meanwhile, things are getting really heated over in Rio de Janeiro, where, in my opinion, Flavio is also part of the criminal organization. Let's take a look at some statements here, especially about this criminal organization that I've already told you about. I believe there are coordination branches in Rio de Janeiro, São Paulo, and the Federal District in Brasilia. Let's see some statements about this, which I was actually waiting for this person to speak out about. One is Otônio de Paula, specifically because he's from Rio de Janeiro, right? So he can speak with more authority about the situation in Rio de Janeiro here. Look, pay attention.
The presidential candidate Flavio Bolsonaro continues to give political support to Claudinho Allau. Why? It's because he's a partner. It's because they have a partnership. It's because they have something to hide. And now they can't abandon the guy now. What if the guy gets arrested and makes a plea bargain? Gather all the corrupt governors of the state of Rio de Janeiro. Gather them all. All of them together can't surpass Claudinho Allau. You can't surpass him. And I'll tell you why you can't. Because Claudinho Allau, partner of Flavio Bolsonaro, who is supported by the Bolsonaro family, not only became corrupt, he sold out the government. What this man did is insane. This is the biggest tax evader in the country, the one Lula wants to arrest and who is there in Miami. He sold the Department of Finance and the state attorney's office to Ricardo Magro to serve the personal interests of Ricardo Magro. The federal police discovered in this recent operation at his house that he sold Rio Previdencia to Daliel Forcaro. He replaced the entire leadership of Rio Previdencia before putting in 3 billion reais of the hard-earned money of retirees and pensioners. This guy is a coward. Criminal. Gangster. And now the federal police already say that he has a close friendship with Daliel Forcaro. The same close relationship Flavio Bolsonaro also has. We still need to find out who introduced whom. Whether it was Claudinho Allau who introduced Forcaro to Flavio Bolsonaro, or if it was Flavio Bolsonaro who introduced Daliel Forcaro to Claudinho Allau, that's for sure. That's very unlikely, Mr. President. This scandal in Rio de Janeiro will almost certainly reach Flavio Bolsonaro, especially because the kid is greedy. The kid is greedy. He's got a huge appetite. The kid is never satisfied with anything. He's not like his father. You can't say that Bolsonaro was corrupt, but the son, my God, the son is way too greedy. Soon the federal police will show why, despite all the scandals, the presidential hopeful Flavio Bolsonaro keeps giving political support to Claudinho Allau. Why? It's because he's a partner. It's because he has a partnership. It's because he's compromised. And he can't abandon the guy now. What if the guy gets arrested and cuts a cooperation deal? It was the same reason why he went to Forcaro's house to try to head off a cooperation deal. And according to Valdemar Costa Neto, to collect the money that was still missing.
You said it all. They're partners. It's part of the same thing. We're a criminal organization. Brasilia, in the federal district. With Ibanez Rocha, former governor of the federal district, Bolsonarist, who took more than 12 billion and injected it into the devil Daniel Forcaro's ass. Rio de Janeiro, just this situation for now. 3 billion. Former Rio de Janeiro Governor Claudio Castro, removed from office, disqualified and ineligible, is from the same political group as Flavio Bolsonaro, like Ibanez Rocha in the federal district. Bolsonaris. Claudio Castro went and shoved almost 3 billion up that devil Daniel Forcaro's ass. Then we look at São Paulo. São Paulo, Ricardo Nunes, mayor of São Paulo. He went and injected 108 million reais into Karina Gama's account. She is the producer of the movie and the sole owner of Go Gope, which is the producer of the movie. No, she won a contract through a public bidding process, Andrea, for an activity she had never done in her life. The payment was made in advance. That same Karina Gama. who was benefited by the same political group from Sao Paulo, from Tarcísio, and from Ricardo Nunes from Sao Paulo for the film. No, 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 it's not for the film, Andrea. It was a public tender that she won. Please, please. She is the sole partner of Go Gope, the producer of the film, who had never made a film before. This company was created for the film, money laundering front company, and this same Karina has an NGO which received several million in parliamentary amendments from Mario Frias. Look, Mario Frias again, producer of the movie, federal deputy. Bia Kicis, federal deputy, all Bolsonaro supporters. Zambelli before leaving, she also approved it. Alexandre Ramage, before fleeing, before running away to the United States, he also approved it. And Marcos Polon, he also approved it. All Bolsonaro supporters. This is being investigated by Flavio Dino. Basically, it's all the same group and the same criminal organization. Let's see a bit of Justice Andre Mendonça's decision from yesterday, in which he ordered several searches and seizures involving exactly this situation, where the federal police submitted the report. And him, who, the ally of Flavio Bolsonaro's political group, former governor of Rio de Janeiro, removed from office and ineligible Claudio Castro, he had contact close to Daniel Volcaro. Let's review the decision in the document. I'll make them big. Not that big. Here, look. The report describes strong evidence of crimes against the national financial system and corruption. It points out that based on personal and political relationships, especially between Daniel Volcaro and the former governor of the state of Rio de Janeiro, Claudio Castro. Oh, personal and political relationships. Investments worth billions were made possible in financial notes and investment funds created and used by the bank, in non-compliance with the investment policy of the public sector pension system and with regulatory requirements. In my view, the investigations reveal, this is Andre Mendonça speaking, deliberate changes in internal procedures, merely formal accreditations, lack of technical analyses, concentration, and excessive risk and use of intermediaries for increasing commissions and concealing the payment of undue advantages. Here it lists a series of situations where the federal police states that Claudio Castro received money, had expenses paid by Daniel E., ultimately taking responsibility, and finally, even traveled to meet Daniel Volcaro abroad. Lastly, regarding the interaction, there are situations involving Claudio Castro. This is something the federal police has, that Claudio Castro has already met at TEM. We need to understand that this needs to be considered. But it wasn't just once. There's something that's going to be revealed soon. You know those trips Flavio and Eduardo took to Dubai? I won't forget. In December 2024, I don't know if it was in 2024 or 2025, that date, I don't remember, but I know that in December, I don't know if it was 2024 or 2025, Eduardo Bolsonaro was in Dubai. Then Flavio Bolsonaro went there. And guess who else went there? Daniel Volcaro. And they live in Dubai. Have you noticed that? There has to be a cross-check of these trips. For all we know, Flavio Bolsonaro and Eduardo Bolsonaro might have already met Daniel Volcaro abroad. Pay attention to what I'm telling you here. That's possible. And maybe the meeting even happened in Dubai, because I'll repeat, I don't know if it was in 2025 or in 2024 in December, they went to Dubai. And I saw a news report, but I didn't connect one thing to the other, because up until then, we didn't know anything about what we know now. The businessman, whatever, who traveled to Dubai so as not to do whatever. Remember that, Before long, we'll find out that Eduardo Bolsonaro and Flavio Bolsonaro met with Daniel Borcaro abroad. Why? Because that's Daniel Borcaro's modus operandi. Daniel Borcaro, to show power, to show wealth, for the person who already wants to, take advantage, he would invite the person to a meeting. He often said, no, but it won't be in Brazil. I have something scheduled somewhere. Can you meet me there? No, don't worry. No, I'll pay for everything. I'll pay for your trip. If my private jet is available, I'll put my jet at your disposal. I'll pay for the hotel. I'll pay for everything. You can even stay at the hotel where I'm staying. That's what happened to Ciro Nogueira. Ciro Nogueira, Bolsonaro's former chief of staff. Yes, a Senator Bolsonaro's former chief of staff. The minister closest to the president is the chief of staff because he basically serves as the president's chief aide. Yes, that's right. He went to a meeting in New York with Daniel Borcaro and everything was paid for by Daniel Borcaro. He stayed at the same hotel as Daniel Borcaro. Do you know how much the stay cost? A day at the hotel, 130,000 reais per day at the hotel for one stay. So that's why I tell you, if Flavio Bolsonaro had this power to demand money from Daniel Borcaro, and Daniel Borcaro had this way of operating where he wanted to show off, he would invite someone to a meeting and say, but I'm in Dubai, for example. I'll cover your ticket and everything. You'll fly on my private jet, stay at the same hotel I'm staying at, and won't need to worry about anything. That's what he did. And let me tell you something. As the right-wing congressman just said, Tony De Paula, and I told you this here yesterday, Flavio Bolsonaro likes money. The Bolsonaro family wants cash, wants assets, wants real estate. And their eyes lit up when they saw so much money, so many schemes with Daniel Borcaro. That's why I say soon we'll find this out. A meeting abroad, all expenses paid by Daniel Borcaro with Flavio Bolsonaro and Eduardo Bolsonaro. And it might even have been in Dubai. It was over there in Dubai. They practically never leave there. They don't leave. Get the code, my dear, my dear. That's the situation. Meanwhile, the Bolsonaro supporters are being manipulated. Why, Andrea? With Lula's upcoming approval for ending the 6-on-1-off schedule, setting a 40-hour work week, bringing down 48, bringing down 44, and for every 5 days worked, you will have 2 days off. They are desperate. You know that Mauricio Marcon from the PL of Rio Grande do Sul, who I think should never be reelected again, requested a review because otherwise it would already be on the floor today for approval. It's only not there because the PL requested a review. Now they've come up with even more to make things difficult. They came up with something called PEC 40, where no, it's no longer the end of the 6-on-1-off schedule. We want the 4-on-3-off schedule just to make things difficult. They absolutely don't want the end of the 6-on-1-off schedule. So since they couldn't overturn it and they can't stop it from going to the floor because it is going to the floor, they've now come up with the idea that they want the 4-on-3-off schedule. These people are so dumb, really so dumb, that I just look at them and think, is there really anyone who believes them? Because they're only doing this to confuse the situation, disrupt the process, and in one way or another try to block the proceedings and the eventual approval on the floor. Because here's the thing, if it gets to the floor, what are they going to have to do? The same thing they did when the bill to exempt income tax for those earning up to 5,000 reais went to the floor. They had to tuck their tails between their legs and vote in favor because it's an election year. So now they're trying everything to keep it from going to the floor. And now they've come up with this nonsense. But who are they going to fool? Only if it's the sheep. No. If it's the sheep, then we have to say they're deceived, manipulated, used, led, herded, and then abandoned. But we're not fooling anyone. Let's see here. The congressman even talked about this too. The congressman, Pastor Henrique Vieira, like, for heaven's sake, right? And who led this, Andre? Guess who led it? The same old thing as always, which is nothing, just Sosemis Cavalcante, who still hasn't explained the 470,000 that they found in his apartment, where he has an open police investigation against him and Carlos Jordi, where their aides moved almost 30 million reais. And what does the federal police suspect it was? Misuse of parliamentary funds, public money. He still hasn't explained the money hidden in a black garbage bag at his house, 470,000. Yeah, he does. He's on a 3-on-4 schedule himself. It's like this. 50,000 raised and he's against ending the 6 days on, 1 day off schedule for you? It's God, country, family, and trickery. These people are so shameless. And the congressman talked about this absurdity here. Pay attention. Look at this. Let me turn it up here. There.
An odd way of speaking, very Cavalcante.
Liberal economy and with the Brazilian worker. He presented PC 40 President of 2025, which establishes the best relationship between employer and worker, which is hours worked, hours paid.
The leader of the PL, he just did it here on the chamber floor. Bizarre. Look, the PL has always been against ending the 6 days on, 1 day off schedule. They never embraced this issue, never defended it. They always worked internally and publicly against ending the 6 days on, 1 day off schedule. Sostrom even went up to the podium and openly defended it. Free negotiation between employer and employee. The more hours worked, the more pay, that is without guaranteed profit. No rights, no regulation of the weekly working hours. To really exploit the working people. Because the logic of this party is the logic of the bosses, of the super rich, with no sensitivity to the struggle of the working people of this country. Bottom line is, they work here day and night, lobbying for the super rich to block this progress, to prevent the end of the 6 days on, 1 day off schedule. In the special committee this week, it was a PL party congressman who requested a review just to delay the vote even further. Then, in a provocative, sarcastic, dishonest, and reckless way, he goes and says that the PL party will introduce a motion to give priority to ending the 6 days on, 1 day off schedule and establishing a 4-day work week.
And we are going to vote in favor of the 4-day work week.
Do you know what that is? I'll use a biblical expression. It's diabolical. Why diabolical? The devil isn't a being with horns, no. At its root, diabolical means that which lies, falsifies, deceives, distorts reality to oppress. So, what is the agenda of the PL? Free negotiation against the end of the 6 on, 1 off schedule. It's unpopular and against the people. What we've wanted for a long time and have fought for day and night in the streets, online, and in Congress is the end of the 6 on, 1 off schedule. The first step is a 5 on, 2 off schedule without a pay cut. And yes, we want to reach a 4 on, 3 off schedule. It's about dignity, quality of life, and rest for working people. So what is the PL doing? It's a ploy. Because they know it's not viable right now. Because they know it will be blown up in the Senate. So what they want is, in a devious way, to deceive, to lie, to create confusion, to mislead, to lie to the people and prevent real progress from being made. It's an act of malice, hypocrisy, and lies. It's Bolsonaro's party, it's the liberal party, the party of putting money in the pockets of the rich while the people work hard. Don't fall for that, and let's keep pushing forward, because we want the immediate end of the 6 on, 1 off schedule. PL doesn't want that. It's just lying to you. Warm regards.
You said it all, Federal Deputy Pastor Henrique Vieira. I think these people aren't taking enough IP. And no, I'm serious. I think these people should take more IP to see if they get a little better in their thinking. Because their ideas, as my grandmother used to say, their ideas are weak. The ideas of the Bolsonaro supporters are weak. I think they need to take more IP, take and use their IP to see if their ideas get a little better. Because for God's sake, right? The embarrassment is so big. The embarrassment is so big that even POTA 360, which we know is right-wing, kind of leaning towards the far right, posted that Flavio Bolsonaro became a meme. That's how ridiculous his meeting with Donald Trump was. Should we play it here? Because no, I'm not going to laugh alone. You have to laugh with me. Look at these. Here he is looking like a clown next to Trump. POTA 360, huh? From a dog, he became a dog. He became Donald Trump's lapdog. He became Donald Trump's lapdog. He became the clown, right? Donald's clown. What? The court jester. Flavio Bolsonaro became the court jester. He became Trump's little dog, Trump's lapdog. Look at this. Wow. I'm not going to say this one no because it's not something, right? I don't like it. I don't like shameless things like that. So brazen. Look at this. Butler, Trump's waiter. Here, look at this. Waiter and butler. Parrot. The parrot was better. You see, he became Donald Trump's hanger-on. Oh, two angry dogs now. Poder 360, which we know is on their side, posted this. Why? Because even they thought it was ridiculous. Man, ridiculous. It wasn't a meeting. It was the gathering to take a picture of Donald Tranquera's photo op hanger-on. Poor thing. He's not even fit to be Donald Tranquera's photo op hanger-on, just so you know. He's not fit for anything. What is he fit for, Andre? To be an inmate. Flavio Bolsonaro is on borrowed time outside jail. Flavio Bolsonaro should have been in jail for many years already, ever since he was a state representative in Rio de Janeiro, with his schemes. But his time is coming, and he will wish he had never gotten into this fight for the presidency of the Republic. Because this is just the beginning, and everything will come to light. And we will be here to show you. Hit the like button, like the live stream, and share it. Kisses.